Okay, welcome to our finals for our public debate forum. This time we're going to have winners from 7th grade go against winners from 8th grade. So from 7th grade we have Airam Cornelio and Mariana versus 8th grade Sara Gonzalez against Miranda Paulino. Completely forgot almost their names. Anyways, without further ado, I'm going to start with the coin toss. So, choose your sides. Head or tails? Head. Tails. And it is tails. Choose your side, pro or con? Con. So 7th grade goes con, 8th graders go pro. Good luck, and we may start.
Hello and good morning. Hello, judges, opponents, and listeners alike. We are the pro side, and we firmly believe that social media hate speech should be censored.
Okay, so let's start. First, social media is no longer just a place to share opinions. It's a force that shapes mental health, public safety, and public truth. When left uncensored, these platforms hate and harmful content faster than facts or accountability. The pro side does not support silencing voices, but responsible censorship to prevent real harm and proven harm. Just as harmful speech is limiting the real world, the digital world must be regulated as well. First, unchecked social media directly harms mental health, especially among young people. Multiple psychological studies show a strong link between unmoderated platforms and increased rates of anxiety, depression, eating disorders, or even suicide ideation algorithms that prioritize shocking, hateful, or extreme content because it generates engagement, not because it's healthy or truthful. Without censorship, harmful content spreads faster than support or facts, placing millions of users at risk. Importantly, censorship does not eliminate free speech. Every society already limits hate speech when it causes harm such as threats, defamation, or incitement to violence. Social media should follow the same standard. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences, especially when speech can endanger lives. Censorship is a protective measure, not an authoritarian one. It safeguards mental health, preserves truth, reduces violence, and ensures that digital spaces remain safe and functional. If social media platforms systematically apply harmful content, whether it is misinformation, hate speech, or content damaging to mental health, then allowing unlimited speech directly enables harm. Just as government restricts hate speech that incites violence or endangers public safety in the real world, the digital public square requires regulation to prevent predictable and preventable damage. If social media remains uncensored, misinformation will continue to cost lives, youth mental health will keep declining, and online hate will increasingly turn into real-world violence. This threatens not only individuals, but public safety, democracy, and social stability.
Wait. Hi? Yes. Okay. Yes. When social media platforms decide what speech is acceptable, the real question becomes, who controls the censor? I negate the resolution because giving private companies the power to censor speech leads to unchecked decisions that harm public dialogue instead of protecting it. Definitions. Censorship means restricting speech based on platform rules, not the law. Chilling effect happens when people stop speaking because they are afraid of being punished. Private companies are businesses that are not elected and are not accountable to the public. Contention 1. Censorship increases polarization instead of reducing hate. Censorship does not eliminate hateful or extreme ideas. Studies from Media Lab show that when controversial content is removed, people move to more radical online spaces. Harvard's Berkman Clay Center explained that this creates echo chambers where people only hear ideas they already agree with. As a result, censorship increased division instead of reducing hate. Contention 2. Private companies should not control acceptable speech. Social media platforms are private companies and should not decide what speech is acceptable. The Brookings Institution explained that content moderation decisions are often inconsistent and biased. Article 19 adds that platforms frequently remove content without transparency or due process. Giving these companies the power to censor is an appeal to authority. It assumes they are right just because they are powerful, even though no one elected them. Contention 3. Chilling effect on free speech. Censorship discourages people from sharing their opinions. PEN America explains that unclear rules make users self-censor out of the fear. The ACLU warns that even legal speech can be silenced when people stop speaking. Society loses diverse ideas and meaningful debate. Conclusion. Social media censorship increases polarization, gives power to unaccountable companies, and weakens free speech. When speech is controlled instead of challenged, society loses the ability to debate, question, and grow. That's it.
Can we have a minute?
And that's time. Moving on to the first crossfire. First question is asked by the pro side. 3 minutes on the clock. Time starts.
Okay, so for protecting vulnerable groups from hate speech, harassment, or threats of rape or murder that disproportionately affect women, racial minorities, LGBTQ individuals, making moderation essential for safety. How can we protect these groups if we don't censor what people who may want to attack those groups can say whatever?
No, victim deserves support, counter speech, and real enforcement against threats, not silence. And I have a question for you. Does removing content remove the ideology behind it?
It does not propagandize that ideology, so it stays hidden from society.
Okay, and can you say this? Should the same rules apply across different cultures and countries?
Each country will know what rules apply to each other, knowing their culture, their political beliefs, and their situation.
Okay.
So I have a question for you too. Throughout centuries, everything has been censored to prevent harm. Why is it different now?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Throughout centuries, government and everything has censored speech to prevent harm to society. What will make it different now?
Well, in that question, can you only repeat the last question? Only the
last question repeated?
Yes.
Okay. Throughout centuries, speech has been censored to prevent harm. What will make it different now? Why don't you think it should be done now?
Well, and that, after major platforms banned extremist content, many users moved to sites like Gap and Parler, which have little to no moderation. Instead of being challenged, their ideas become more extreme inside echo chambers. Censorship does not eliminate hate, it pushes it elsewhere.
You're not answering my question.
Ask the question again.
Throughout centuries, speech has been censored to prevent harm. What do you think makes it different now? Do you think people have the right to say offensive things to each other?
Well, I think that no, that was no.
So, if we censor speech, people won't have the right to say those harmful things, and it will prevent everyone from feeling bad.
And
or
that
have-
would be time. Thank you. Moving on to rebuttals. Speaker twos of each team. Both parties ready? Sure, how much? A minute? Okay, a minute running on the clock.
Okay. Voy a ver, déjame. Vulnerable. Okay. Okay, sí, yes, I like that. Okay, of each one, okay. Si quieres yo I, ah.
And that would be time. Moving on to rebuttals, pro side. Take it away. Rebuttal, yeah.
Okay. According to the World Health Organization, social media censorship is necessary to stop the spread of misinformation. Can you not? To stop the spread of misinformation. Many information about health, elections, and violence has already caused real-world damage. For example, misinformation about vaccine has contributed to lower vaccination rates and preventable deaths. When lies spread faster than facts, democracy, public health, and social trust collapse. Censorship acts as a filter to prevent demonstratively false or dangerous content from misleading the public. According to the ADL, online hate speech and harassment escalate into real-world violence. Studies show that exposure to extreme or hateful content online increases radicalization and dehumanization of minority groups. Social media has been directly linked to hate crimes, coordinated harassment, and even terrorist recruitment. Censored content that promotes violence or dehumanization is not oppression, it's full prevention. Importantly, censorship does not eliminate free speech. Every society already limits when it causes harm, such as threats, defamation, or incitement to violence. Social media should follow the same standard. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence, especially when speech can endanger lives. Censorship is a protective measure, not an authoritarian one. It safeguards mental health, preserves the truth, reduces violence, and ensures that digital spaces remain safe and functional. If social media platforms systematically amplify harmful content, whether it is misinformation, hate speech, or content damaging to mental health, then allowing unlimited speech directly enables harm. Just as governments restrict speech that incites violence or endangers public safety in the real world, the digital public square requires regulation to prevent predictable and preventable damage. If social media remains uncensored, misinformation will continue to cost lives, youth mental health will keep declining, and online hate will increasingly turn into real-world violence. This threatens not only individuals, but public safety, democracy, and social stability. By implementing responsible censorship, we protect vulnerable users, preserve truth, and prevent preventable harm. The impact on our day-to-day is powerful. Censorship saves lives, safeguards mental health, and creates safer digital spaces for everyone.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the con side. Take it away.
Okay. The pro side argument said that censorship, the hate speech, can cause harm to people. But censorship doesn't eliminate hate completely. It pushes it somewhere else. After major platforms ban extremist content, many users moved to sites like Gap and Parler, which have little to not moderation. Instead of being challenged, their ideas become more extreme inside echo chambers. And also, they say that censorship prevents violence and misinformation, but censorship hides ideas instead of controlling them. When controversial content is removed from the mainstream platforms, it often resurfaces in private groups or encrypted apps, where misinformation spreads unchecked and unchallenged. They also talk about mental health, but mental health harm shows that platforms and better designs need better designs and safeguards, not censorship. Removing speech does not treat depression or anxiety, it only hides the problem. Now, I'm gonna defend our case. Censorship does not reduce hate. It pushes it somewhere, it pushes it more extreme spaces. MIT Media Lab in Harvard's Bedkar Klein Center shows that removing content creates echo chambers and increase polarization. Social media platforms are private and unconnotable according to Booking and Article 19. Moderation is based in consistency and lack transparency. Censorship also creates a chilling effect. PEN American and the ASLU explains that vague rules cause users to self-censor, even when their speech is legal. For all these reasons, the negative side is correct, and we strongly negate the resolution.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the second crossfire between the second speakers of each team. Are both parties ready?
They ask first?
Yes. First question is asked by the pro side. Time for the second crossfire starts now.
Okay. Do you think bad ideas like racism should be censored? You mentioned that if with censorship, people can lead to censor their own ideas. If these ideas you're talking about are being censored, are being censored, doesn't that mean the conversations on itself are hateful?
Wait, can you repeat it again? I didn't understand you so well.
Okay. Do you think bad ideas like racism shouldn't be censored? If these ideas that you're talking about are being censored, doesn't that mean the conversation on itself is hateful?
Well, it can be, but with education, in the schools, we can educate the kids how to treat others online and offline. And now, I want to ask you something. Can you guarantee censorship will be applied fairly to all groups?
Sorry, can you repeat yourself?
Can you guarantee censorship will be applied fairly to all groups? And can you want me to define the question?
Yes.
I'm asking if censorship can be on base, or it will favor some point of views. Want me to ask you something else better?
Yes, please.
Okay. What happens when platforms censor speech that later turns out to be acceptable or true?
Even if it's acceptable or true, there are ways of spreading the truth that don't essentially need to have hateful content or words in it. It's not about censoring important conversations that we need to have. It's about censoring the hateful parts.
Okay, I see. And is there a clear point where censorship ends, or does it keep expanding?
Could you elaborate?
I'm asking if censorship create a slippery slope.
Can you elaborate more, please? I didn't get your point.
I'm asking if censorship create a slippery slope.
What did she mean? Oh.
Want me to ask you something else then?
No.
Okay.
Censorship isn't something that will censor. Okay, censorship, as you say, isn't exactly a slippery slope. It's something, hate speech, even though it has Okay. Hate speech will always have a point where it needs to be censored.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Second crossfire time is done. So moving on to summaries from first speakers of each side. Both parties ready? Time for the summary. Yes, how much time? You have a minute left. 1 minute. Okay, there you go. And the minute's done. Moving on to summaries. Pro side, please take it away. Time.
So finally, as the pro side, we know for a fact that censorship will not eliminate free speech. Every society already limited hate speech when it causes harm such as threat, defamation, or incitement to violence. Free speech censorship, what we'll do is protect vulnerable people, protect the racial minorities like the LGBTQ people and people with disablement. Censorship is a protective measure, not an authoritarian one. It safeguards mental health, preserves truth, reduces violence, and ensures that digital spaces remain safe and functional. The pro side does not support silencing voices, but responsible censorship to prevent real and proven harm. Just as harmful speech is limited in the real world, the digital world must be regulated as well. By implementing responsible censorship, we protect vulnerable users, preserve truth, and prevent preventable harm. The impact on our day-to-day is powerful. Censorship saves lives, safeguards mental health, and creates safer digital spaces for everyone. If social media remains uncensored, misinformation will continue to cost lives, youth mental health will keep declining, and online hate will increasingly turn into real-world violence. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the con side. Summary, take it away.
Okay, in this debate, we have made it clear that hate speech is a serious issue. However, the real question is whether censorship by social media platforms is the right solution. Our side has demonstrated that social media companies are private corporations, not democratic institutions, and giving them the power to decide what speech is acceptable is dangerous and inconsistent. There is no clear, universal definition of hate speech leads to biased enforcement and unfair censorship. We also explained that censorship does not eliminate it. It simply pushes it into other spaces where it becomes harder to track and address. Removing content does not change beliefs and stop radicalization at its root. Instead of censorship, our site supports education, transparency, and user protection tools as more effective and sustainable solutions that address the problem without sacrificing fairness and or accountability. For this reason, while hate speech must be confronted, censorship by social media platforms is not the answer. We therefore stand firmly on the con side.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the grand crossfire. All parties involved, all parties ready? Okay, first question asked by the earlier speaker. Unfortunately, you don't have time left to ask.
I have a question. Who will ask first, pro or con?
The earlier speaker always asks the first questions. That will make it the pro side.
Okay.
Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Do you need time? Okay, so time running starts now. Con can ask the first question if pro is on ready.
I have a question to Sara Gonzalez. If censorship is effective, why does hateful ideology continue to grow online? If censorship is effective, why does hateful ideology continue to grow online?
That's our point. It will keep growing if we don't add the correct measures and censorship that we need. You're reinforcing our point.
Yeah, but as we said with the censorship sometimes, because the meaning is complex, if the platforms have the power of censorship, anything they want, they can censor comments that are not being hateful at all. For example, can I give you one?
Of course.
In 2020, there was the COVID-19, where platforms decide to censor that word, COVID, which happened to anyone who mentioned that word will be censored or banned, which caused people like medical influencers to couldn't communicate people in platforms how to defend themselves or protect themselves from the COVID. How would you defend that? That because of the censorship, people couldn't really understand the meaning of the COVID or the consequences this could have.
Before answering your question, I would like to know your sources and why exactly was the word censored? Because if it was censored, it must have been for a specific reason, such as it being a trigger word for many people.
Okay, you want to know our sources?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Specifically for what you said now about the word COVID being censored.
Okay. We have the Beckman Klein Center, which is an important study in internet law, censorship and free expression. And the Buckling Institution, an important defending freedom of expression worldwide.
You still haven't answered me though. Do you know the reason why the word COVID was censored to begin with?
Yeah, for the platforms, they say that this was an explicit content. So that means platforms think that explicit content is it's the COVID, which was people trying to protect others.
No, it's everybody.
What do you think about that?
Repeat yourself, like just the last part.
Okay, platforms, the platforms censor COVID because they thought this was a explicit content, which prevent people to really know what the COVID was about.
Although I may understand where you are coming from,
That would be time. Thank you.
that is untrue. Okay.
Moving on to final focus by the
Yeah, I have
second speakers of each team. Both parties ready?
Wait, one time.
How much?
How much? A minute?
You have a minute left.
A minute, es la última parte.
A minute.
Okay, time running.
Okay, I can say, I have a Josie. You have, I can, ¿lo digo? You say it. Okay, sí, tienes razón.
Okay, minute time run over. Moving on to final focus, Pro. Please take it away.
We are not saying we need to censor important conversations, but hateful ones that lead to real world harm. Free speech doesn't mean free of consequence. We want to set boundaries to protect minorities and vulnerable groups, as has been happening in the real world for centuries with the government silencing things that could potentially be a threat. I'd like to point out how our side isn't here to make voice silence, but to set boundaries and protect lives. I'd like to point out our opponent's side. During the rebuttal, our opponents didn't properly answer us and instead started talking about completely different things from our question, straying away from the topic that we were trying to point out. Also, at two different moments, they reinforce our point by saying that people shouldn't say those offensive things, which reinforces our point as to why we need censorship, seeing as they agree with us that there should be limits to what people can say online.
On the consign, please take it away.
Okay. At the end of this debate, the question is not whether hate speech is harmful. Everyone agrees that is. The real question is who should have the power to control speech online. Our side has shown that social media platforms are private corporations, not democratic institutions. Giving them the authority to decide what ideas are allowed concentrates enormous power in the hands of companies that are unelected, unaccountable, and inconsistent. We also demonstrate that censorship does not eliminate hate. Removing content might hide the problem, but it does not change beliefs or prevent radicalization. It may, in many cases, it simply pushes harmful ideas into less visible and more extreme spaces. Most importantly, our position relies on credible and prestigious institutions that warn against unclear standards and unchecked moderation. When rules are vague, enforcement becomes biased, and digital voices are silenced alongside harmful ones. Hate speech must be confronted, but control is not the same as progress. A healthier digital space is built through transparency, accountability, and open dialogue, not by handing absolute power to private platforms. For these reasons, we firmly stand on the consign.
All right, thank you. All right, good job, both parties. Great debate. Please allow us a few seconds, and we'll get back to you. So we all agree on the following. For the constructive speeches in the first round, the first speakers did good. We would grant that round to the con-side due to it being structured in a way where contentions were clearly stated and studies were provided. Pro-side did not provide any evidence and studies during the constructive. No, but during the constructive. when it came to the first crossfire, Pro was able to engage in the questions and more prepared in asking and answering, while Con was relying on reading the answers. When it came to rebuttals, that's where Pro side provided the evidence and reinforced arguments, but the Con did an actual rebuttal with references to what the Pro side said on the first round. So for that reason, we will grant it to the Con side as well. And during the second crossfires, both parties had strong questions, but Pro did have trouble following questions and keeping up with that, in which the Con, as well as during the grand crossfire, the Con was allowed to speak more. So for that reason, they were dominating during the grand crossfire. All the judges agreed that the Con side would win the debate. So congratulations.
This time we have 9th grade against 10th grade. We have the students Sofia Machuca and Emily Peralta from 9th grade against 10th grade students, Sofia Matos against Laili Pichardo. Sofia Matos, I'm sorry. They are excellent debaters. Sofia Castellanos, oh man, I'm sorry, Sofia. They're excellent debaters, all four of them. We expect a very nice debate. So without further ado, let's just choose your sides. I'm gonna flip the coin. Choose. Tails. It's heads. Choose your side. Con for 10th grade, pro for 9th grade. Good luck.
Who's the first speaker on the pro side? Okay. All right. 3 minutes for each round, including grand crossfire. Both parties ready. You have 2 minutes to ask for prep time, each team, okay? Pro site,
Okay.
take it away.
Today, we firmly support the regulation of hate speech on social media. First, we must clearly define the issue. According to the United Nations, hate speech refers to discourse that targets individuals or groups based on inherent characteristics, such as race, religion, or nationality, and threatens social peace. This kind of speech does not simply offend, it dehumanizes, creating an environment where discrimination and violence becomes acceptable. Our first argument is the protection of vulnerable groups. Unrestricted hate speech causes serious psychological and social harm, including fear, anxiety, and exclusion. This is why Article 20 of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights explicitly requires states to prohibit any advocacy of national, racial, or religious hatred that incites discrimination, hostility, or violence. This article draws a clear line between free expression and dangerous speech. Freedom of expression ends where speech actively encourages discrimination or violence against others. Our second argument is that hate speech has real-world consequences. According to the Amnesty International, Facebook in Myanmar became an echo chamber of anti-Rohingya hate, where military-linked actors spread disinformation and openly incited violence against a Muslim ethnic minority. The United Nations later concluded that social media played a significant role in the atrocities that followed. Similarly, the University of Warwick study found a strong correlation between spikes in online anti-refugee hate speech in Germany and violent attacks on refugees, including arson and assaults. Hate speech does not stay online, it translates into real harm. Our third argument is that the social media platforms are private companies, not public squares. U.S. courts, including the Supreme Court in Manhattan Community Access Corp. via Halleck, have ruled that private platforms are not bound by constitutional free speech obligations. Users voluntarily agree to terms of service that prohibit harassment and hate. Enforcing these rules is contract enforcement, not censorship. Fourth, when hateful content is allowed to circulate freely, repeated exposure makes it feel normal rather than extreme. Over time, dehumanizing language becomes accepted as just opinions, which lowers social boundaries against discrimination. Young users are especially vulnerable ones because they are still forming their values, identity, and understanding of what behavior is socially acceptable. Seeing hate repeatedly teaches them that targeting certain groups is normal or justified. Real-life examples of these are the anti-Muslim bullying in UK schools after terrorist attacks, situations, and anti-Asian hate during COVID-19. Finally, this is not an attack on free expression.
That would be time.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the con side. 3 minutes on the clock. Take it away.
This debate isn't about hating hate speech. It's about whether handing corporations the power to define acceptable speech is more dangerous than the speech. Acceptable speech is more dangerous than speech itself. We negate the resolution. Social media platforms do not censor hate speech. My side stands by these definitions. Social media platforms are private, profit-driven online services that allow users to create, share, and algorithmically amplify content and scale. To censor means to suppress or limit content under platform rules. Hate speech means speech that targets people based on protected identity. My first contention is that hate speech is too subjective to be enforced fairly. Speech definitions remain irreducibly subjective, inviting viewpoint discrimination. Europe bans Holocaust denial. The US protects it. Democracies can't agree. Pre-Musk Twitter flagged Trump tweets as hate, targeting politics. Canada's laws till gender-critical feminists. UK's Online Safety Act muscles protests. Vague rules don't curb hate. They silence dissent, religion, and activism. Censorship, my second contention is that censorship gives corporations dangerous control over public discourse. Companies like Meta and Google influence what billions see daily but lack neutral judges, consistent standards, or meaningful appeals. Unlike courts, platforms do not provide due process. Giving them authority over acceptable speech creates unchecked power. This threatens free participation and allows ideological or political manipulation. My third contention is that banning hate speech makes it worse. Extremists dig deeper and recruit more when censored. When Twitter kicked off extremists like neo-Nazis, they got 10 times more followers on apps like Telegram. Alex Jones blew up after his bans. Psychology calls it the backfire effect. People cling harder to beliefs when challenged that way. Hate speech is harmful, but censorship power is irreversible, easily abused, and historically dangerous. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the first crossfire between the first speakers of each side. Both parties ready? How much? 30 seconds for the pro side. And the 30 seconds are up. The first question is asked by the pro side. 3 minutes on the clock, take it away.
You claim moderation silences minorities. Then why do marginalized groups consistently demand stronger enforcements against hate?
Can you repeat, please?
You claim moderation silence minorities. Then why do marginalized groups consistently demand stronger enforcements against hate?
Are you talking about like the harm it does to the minorities when companies get the right to silence whoever they want?
Can you repeat?
Do you mean like how affected are the minorities when companies get they have the power?
I mean, like marginalized groups consistently demand
What do you
stronger
mean by marginalized groups?
minorities. Yeah.
So how are these minorities affected? Like, can you clarify?
Okay. I'm gonna repeat the question. Like, okay. Then, like, why do marginalized groups, I mean, as minorities, consistently demand stronger enforcements against hate?
Do they demand strong enforcements against hate?
Yeah,
How?
that's what I'm asking.
You asked why, not how.
But like, can you answer the question?
No, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. I'm gonna ask you another question. Then, if hate speech is just offensive, why do international courts and the UN classify it as a threat to social peace?
We are not denying the harm of hate speech, and we are not classifying as only offensive language.
Okay. You claim that if platforms are private companies, why should they be forced to host speech that violates their own rules?
They are not forced to hold speech that violates their own rules. Censoring everything completely is practically impossible, since people will always find another way.
All right. If censorship always leads to radicalization, how do you explain cases like Myanmar or Germany, where lack of moderation directly precedes real-world violence?
Can you repeat, please?
Okay. If censorship always leads to radicalization, how do you explain cases like Myanmar or Germany, where lack of moderation directly precedes real-world violence?
Well, hate speech isn't directly.
That would be time for the 3 minutes on the first crossfire. Thank you. Moving on to the rebuttal. Are both parties ready? Pro side, 3 minutes on the clock. Take it away.
First, they claim that free speech must be protected even in offensive or hateful ideas, but freedom of expression has never been absolute. Article 20 of the ICCPR explicitly requires states to provide speech that incites discrimination, hostility, or violence. This is not an optional guideline. It's a binding human rights standard designed to prevent serious harm. Speech that dehumanizes entire groups and encourages violence does not strengthen democracy, it destroys it. Second, the opposition suggests that hate speech is merely offensive and really, yet the evidence proves otherwise. Amnesty International documents how Facebook and Myanmar amplify anti-Rohingya hate speech, portraying a Muslim minority as invaders and calling for their elimination. The United Nations conclude that social media played a significant role in the resulting atrocities. Similarly, a University of Warwick study found that spikes in online anti-refugee hate in Germany reliably predict violence attacks on refugee shelters. Hate speech does not remain online, it precedes real-world violence. Third, the opposition the U.S. courts, including the Supreme Court in Manhattan Community Press Court v. Halleck, have ruled that platforms are private actors, not state entities. User voluntarily agrees to terms of service that ban harassment and hate. Enforcing the rules is not censorship. It is contract enforcement in private spaces, no different from rules in the school or workplace. Fourth, when hate speech gets unchecked, it stops shocking people and starts feeling normal. Dehumanization language is treated as opinion, which weakens social limits against discrimination. Young users, and especially affected because their values and sense of right or wrong are still forming. Repeated sports teaches them that targeting specific groups is acceptable. This is what evident in anti-Muslim bullying in the UK schools after terrorist attacks and anti-Asian hate during COVID-19. In conclusion, regulating hate speech is lawful, evidence-based, and necessary. It prevents harm, protects vulnerable communities, and preserves meaningful democratic dialogue. Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to the con side. 20 seconds for the con side. Time. Twenty seconds are up. Time 3 minutes on the clock. Start time. Can you try to turn it on? Can you check?
Hello? Hello?
Can you speak louder?
Hello? It is on.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Take it away.
Judge, the pro side keeps repeating one claim, that hate speech is harmful. We do not dispute that. The real question in this round is whether censorship by private platforms is the correct, safe, and effective response. On that question, the pro side fails. First, they rely heavily on the United Nations definition of hate speech, but a definition does not justify enforcement. Even if hate speech dehumanizes, that does not automatically prove that corporate censorship produces harm without creating greater risks. Harm alone is not a blank check for power. On their first point about protecting vulnerable groups, they assume a clear line exists between free expression and dangerous speech. In practice, that line is subjective and constantly shifting. What counts as dehumanizing often depends on context, politics, and interpretation. When rules are vague, enforcement is inconsistent, and history shows that vague moderation disproportionately harms activists, dissidents, and minorities. Second, they cite Harvard studies showing a correlation between social media hate speech and violence such as arson or assault. But correlation is not causation. Those studies do not prove that hate speech caused violence, nor that censorship would have prevented it. Social unrest, political polarization, economic stress, and offline radicalization all exist independently of social media. If correlation justified censorship, nearly all controversial speech during tense periods could be restricted. That standard is dangerously broad. Third, the pro side argues that platforms are private companies, not public squares, and that users voluntarily agreed to terms of service. But private ownership does not make power harmless. A handful of corporations control global communication. Network effects mean users cannot realistically just leave without losing social, political, and professional access. When participation in public life depends on a few platforms, censorship becomes digital exclusion without due process, transparency, or accountability. Fourth, they argue that repeated exposure normalizes hate, especially for young users, but censorship does not erase hateful beliefs, it removes them from public scrutiny. Extremist ideas do not disappear when banned, they migrate to closed spaces where they face no challenge and often radicalize further. Visibility allows society to confront and reject harmful ideas. Silence delays that confrontation until the beliefs are stronger and harder to counter. In Crossfire, the pro side asks why moderation sometimes precedes real-world violence. That question assumes moderation caused prevention without evidence. They never show that censorship stopped violence, only that violence exists. That is not proof of effectiveness. Finally, they claim enforcing rules is not censorship, but removing speech based on content is censorship, regardless of who does it. Calling it regulation does not change its impact when decisions are opaque, irreversible, and concentrated in corporate hands. Judge, hate speech is harmful, but censorship power is irreversible, subjective, and historically abused. The pro side proves harm exists, they never prove their solution is safer than the problem. Bad speech can be challenged, unchecked power cannot.
All right. Okay, moving on to second crossfire between the second speakers. Both parties ready? Okay, before
Hello? Okay, yeah, got it.
Okay, so 3 minutes on the clock for the second crossfire. The first question is asked by the pro side. Time, take it away.
Okay, you argue that banning hate speech drives underground, but is letting it spread publicity, normalize, and recruit new supporters really safer?
Can you repeat that? I can't understand you.
Okay, you argue that banning hate speech drives it underground, but is letting it spread publicity, normalize, and recruit new supporters really safer?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, you argue that banning hate speech, it really doesn't eliminate.
It ties to underground, right?
Yeah, but letting it spread like publicity in or normalize is really safer.
It's not.
Well, so I'm going to ask you another question. You say platforms should be regulating hate speech, or do you deny that hate speech encouraging discrimination or violence causes real harm, or do you just think harm is acceptable?
We're not saying that. We're saying that how do you know that hate speech is the inherent cause of harm? Because there are many other factors. You don't know if someone got criticized, say, for their race, for their religion offline.
Well, basically, we have evidence about that. That is the case in Myanmar, where the social media play an important factor and was the main.
Okay, but it's not the main factor.
Yeah, it was. I really say we say in the first speech that the United Nations make an investigation,
Did that
and it was
study affect everyone?
What?
Did that study affect everyone?
What?
Did that study affect everyone?
How? Can you repeat the question? I really not understanding what you're saying.
What? Okay, so repeat what you said about the United Nations then.
Okay, I said that in the United Nations recognize that in the case of Myanmar, the social media that was Facebook played the important role in the resolution.
Okay, got it. But you're applying it to Myanmar, not the rest of the world.
Okay, but I have another example about it.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, the anti-refugee hate speech and attacks that the University of Warwick did a study where they take the resolution that the social media played an important factor and was one of the main factors to the attacks to the refugee in Germany.
Wait, can you repeat that, please?
Okay, in the first speech, we said, right, that the anti-refugee hate speech that, okay, the University of Warwick did a study where they found out that the social media played an important factor and was one of the main factors to the attacks to the refugee in Germany.
That would be time. Moving on to summaries from the first speakers of each team. Are both parties ready? How much time do you need? Okay, time. Take it away.
Okay, at the heart of today's debate is a simple question. Should social media protect human dignity or allow harm in the name of absolute permissiveness? We have shown that hate speech is not merely a merely offensive opinion. According to the United Nations, it is a discourse that targets peoples based on inherent characteristics and threatens social peace by dehumanizing them. That is precisely why Article 20 of the ICCPR requires that prohibition of advocacy of hatred that incites discrimination, hostility, or violence. International law draws a clear line and hate speech crosses it. Our strongest point is that harm prevention is harm prevention. Evidence proves that hate speech leads to real-world violence. In Myanmar, Amnesty International and the UN documented how Facebook enabled anti-Rohingya incitement that precedes mass atrocities. In Germany, University of Warwick researchers found that spikes in online anti-refugee hate directly predicted violent attacks. Hate speech does not stay online, it escalates. We also demonstrated that social media platforms are private companies, not public squares. Courts have ruled that they are legally allowed to moderate content, and users voluntarily agree to rules banning abuse. This is not censorship, it's rule enforcement. Finally, unchecked hate becomes normalized, especially among young users still forming their values. These normalizations fueled anti-Muslim bullying in UK schools after terrorist attacks and anti-Asian harassment during COVID-19. In conclusion, banning hate speech is lawful, evidence-based, and necessary. It protects vulnerable groups, democratic participation, and the integrity of public discourse. Allowing dehumanization is not neutrality, it's complicity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the con side for the summaries.
Can I get 1 minute?
1 minute, 1 minute on the clock. All right, time. Moving on to summary on the con side. Take it away, 3 minutes.
Judge, this debate is not about defending hate speech or pretending it is harmless. We all agree that hate is wrong. The real question is whether giving corporations the power to decide what speech is acceptable is more dangerous than the speech itself. First, hate speech is too subjective to be enforced fairly. Even democratic countries cannot agree on what should be banned. Europe criminalizes Holocaust denial, while the United States protects it as free speech. Second, censorship gives corporations dangerous control over public discourse. Companies like Meta and Google already decide what billions of people see every day, yet they have no neutral judges, no consistent standards, and no real due process. Unlike courts, platforms offer no meaningful appeals and no accountability. Giving them profit-driven corporations the authority to define acceptable speech allows them to shape democracy itself. That is not protection, that is concentrated power. Third, censoring hate speech often makes it worse. When extremists are removed from mainstream platforms, they do not disappear. They move to private networks where they become more radical and harder to challenge. Research shows this backfire effect causes people to cling more strongly to their beliefs after censorship. Where extremists were banned from Twitter, many gained even larger followings elsewhere. Censorship does not defeat harmful ideas, it strengthens them. Hate speech is harmful. We do not deny that, but censorship power is irreversible, easily abused, and historically dangerous. Bad speech can be challenged, debated, and defeated. Unchecked corporate control over speech cannot.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the grand crossfire, all participants involved. 3 minutes, both parties ready?
We have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. You have 40 left.
Yes.
You want 30? Okay, 30 seconds. Minutes, time, first question by the pro side. Take it away.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, you admit threats and incitement to violence should be removed. Who decides what counts as incitement if not rules and moderations?
That's what we said.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking you, if you admit that threats and incitement to violence should be removed, who decides what counts as incitement if not rules and moderations?
What I said is that rules are inconsistent. Vague rules,
What?
Bad enforcement of rules makes the overall definition of hate speech inconsistent.
Okay. We wanted to ask you another question then.
Wait, you say hate speech is too subjective to define, is inconsistent, like you said. Then why this international law, the ICCPR Article 20, clearly distinguishes incitement to hatred and violence from protected speech? Can you see?
What does that article say? Can you say to me, what does it say?
The article? Okay, I will say, I quote, "Any advocacy of national or racial or religious hatred that constitute incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence shall be provided by law." So basically, I'm asking you, if you said that hate speech is too vague to define, to inconsistently, why does international law clearly distinguish incitement to hatred and violence from protected speech?
That's not the issue on board, though.
Well, that was she was saying. I only was saying what she said, basically. So I wanted to ask you another thing about, where do you draw the line? If speech openly calls a group animals or encourage exclusion, should platforms really be forced to host it?
To what?
Host it.
Hosted.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, where do you draw the line? If speech openly calls a group animals or encourages exclusion, should platforms really be forced to host it?
We're not saying they should be forced to host it. They can decide whether to censor it or not. What we are saying is that when they have that power, they are also able to abuse it.
The same platforms amplify the hateful content and hate speech that you're talking about.
Yeah, because it's
So
more
how do you expect the platforms to ban it when they're the one that are profiting from it?
That would be time for the Grand Crossfire. Thank you. Moving on to final focus on both parties. Are both parties ready?
Can we use all of the prep time we have left?
A minute and 30 on the clock.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to final focus. Pro, take it away.
To win this debate because our case was built on law, evidence, and real-world consequences. We showed that banning hate speech is not an attack on free expression, but a necessary protection of human dignity. International law itself, through Article 20 of the ICC repeal, makes it clear that speech which incites discrimination or violence must be restricted. We also proved that social media platforms are private spaces with agreed open rules. Users' consent to moderation and curse have confirmed that enforcing these rules is not censorship. Our opponent didn't ask clearly questions, didn't answer with clearly arguments, and they were contradicting themselves. And they were repeating the same over and over again in the crossfires, and they were really defending their points. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to con side, final focus. 3 minutes on the clock.
Okay, Judge, the pro side did establish one important thing in this round. In some cases, hate speech on social media has preceded real-world violence. We do not deny that. But this debate is not about whether harm exists. It is about whether censorship by private platforms is the correct, safe, and effective response to that harm. And on that question, the pro side still falls short. Let's start with scope. The pro side points to some cases where hate speech preceded violence, but policy that affects billions of users cannot be justified by isolated or exceptional cases. They never prove that most hate speech leads to violence or that most users are exposed to content that creates imminent harm. Narrow examples cannot justify broad, permanent censorship power. Next is causation, even with their concession. Yes, hate speech has preceded violence in some cases, but precedence is not proof of necessity. They never show that censorship would have prevented those acts or that violence would not have occurred through other channels. Radicalization happens offline through economic stress, political instability, and extremist communities that exist beyond social media. Without proving censorship actually interrupts that pipeline, their solution remains speculative. Third, look at their assumptions. They assume that enforcement will be fair, limited, and consistent. They assume definitions will not expand. They assume corporations will not abuse the power. None of those assumptions are proven. In reality, content moderation is opaque, inconsistent, and often politically pressured. Calling it rule enforcement instead of censorship does not change the impact when speech is removed without due process or meaningful appeal. Now weigh impact, because this is where con wins. On the pro side, the benefit is partial. Censorship might reduce harm in some cases. On the con side, the risk is structural and irreversible. Once censorship power exists, it does not stay narrow. When speech is removed, it cannot be recovered. Once control over discourse is centralized, it cannot be easily reclaimed. Bad ideas can be challenged, criticized, and rejected, but unchecked power cannot. Finally, on their claim that platforms are private companies, private ownership does not make power safe. When a few corporations control global communication, censorship becomes digital exclusion. Users do not meaningfully consent when network effects trap participation. Judge, the pro side proved harm exists. They did not prove their solution is safer than the harm itself. For scope, causation, assumptions, and impact, the more responsible and democratic choice is to reject corporate censorship. We ask you to negate. Thank you.
All right, and that would be it for the debate. Great job on both parties. Please allow us a few minutes to make a decision. Thank you for waiting. Yes, the judges, what? The judges have spoken. We have a different, but majority on the table eventually wins. For constructive sides, the pro side was able to manage to claim 4 strong claims, and for that reason, we would grant it to the pro side over con. During Crossfire, we had a little bit of a dispute because the question that was asked was not understood by neither. So the question that was asked by the pro, con was asking for a clarification, but it was clarification was not given. Nevertheless, the con side did not press on any further matters, and for that reason, the table decided on the pro side as well. The rebuttals, we all seem to agree that the con side takes it with actual references in attacking the claims that the pro made directly, and even attacking the crossfire question that was previously done. So for that reason, the rebuttal goes for the con side. Second crossfire, the table voted for the pro, and grand crossfire, table voted for pro as well. The debate is won by the pro side, so congratulations.
Good job. Once again, just a piece of advice for all four of you. I did mention this also to the other team that was debating prior to you guys. And it's just, do not waste your time on asking, like, I'm gonna ask you a question, okay? That's the only thing. Remember, go straight to the question. Remember that time in debate is really important, okay? But overall, all four of you did awesome, okay? So feel proud of yourself, all four of you. Okay, once again, welcome back. This time we have the final rounds against 11th graders versus 12th graders. Something that is amusing and important for everybody to know is that we have the champions for the public forum debate for the last 3 years, which is our former 12th graders, Miguel Melo and Rodrigo Marchena. And they're going against 11th graders, Gianfranco Valdez and Ian Marinas, which have also done a great job in this school year. So without further ado, let's begin with the coin toss. Choose your sides. Head or tails? Heads. Heads it is. Choose your side. Con, so we have 12 graders, con the resolution, and we have 11 graders pro the resolution. Good luck, guys.
Okay.
Who's the first speaker between the two of you? Gianfranco.
Pero, te presiona un botón. Aquí es el botón.
Con side first speaker, Miguel. Okay, we're ready. Both judges ready? Parties ready? Okay, 3 minutes on the clock. Pro side, take it away.
¿Qué es lo que son?
Prueba, ¿funciona el micrófono bien? Okay. Okay, honorable judges, we affirm the debate over censorship is often framed as a clash of opinions, but the science and history says otherwise. Unchecked hate speech is not a viewpoint. It is a neurological weapon and a security accelerant. We negate the idea that more speech is a cure for violence. Hate speech is not a feeling. It is a measurable public health crisis. Peer-reviewed research from the NIH and PMC 2025 study proves that targeted dehumanization triggers that bring the brain's amygdala damage. The 3 detection system producing chronic stress and neurological trauma similar to the physical violence. These are not hurt feelings. This is biological damage that silences victims by traumatizing them out of the public square. We are weighing the right to neurological health against the right of a bigot to have a megaphone. My second contention, the precursor to atrocity. History proves that genocide does not begin with violence. It begins with dehumanizing speech. When a society allows a hate speech to go uncensored, it provides the ideological infrastructure necessary for mass murder. This is the stage 1 of the 10 stages of genocide, where groups are classified and dehumanized to make future violence seem justifiable or even necessary to the public evidence. The Holocaust is a good example for this. Historians agree that Nazi regime rise was predicated years of unchecked anti-Semitic propaganda and the hate speech that prepared the German public to accept it and participate in the Holocaust. In the modern expansion today, we see global expansionists of extremist ideas through digital networks. The United Nations has explicitly linked the 2017 Rohingya genocide in Myanmar to uncheck the hate speech on social media, which acted as an accelerant for the real-world ethnic cleansing. The cost of free reach for hate speech is measured in human lives, and we are not merely censoring bad ideas, we are disrupting the proven mechanism used to launch genocides and global extremist movements. If this state has the power to prevent the next mass atrocity by cutting off its primary recruitment and dehumanization tool, it has the moral and legal obligation to do so. We prioritize to life over the right of incite mass murder. My third contention, the law of friction. The opposition will argue that censorship just hides hate. However, the law of friction on the Stanford study 2024 shows that deplatforming results in a 90% drop in reach. While a few extremists may move to the dark web, they lose their ability to recruit their general public, moving hate from a viral megaphone to an isolated basement in a strategic success. In conclusion, we prioritize the right to life over the reach of terrorists, because safety is a prerequisite for speech. We strongly affirm.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the con side. 3 minutes on the clock. Take it away.
No? Okay, perfect. Thank you. We state that hate speech should not be censored because while the intention behind censoring it may be noble, the execution is a direct threat to the foundations of free society. First, we have to recognize that hate speech is an inherently subjective term that leads to a dangerous slippery slope. we've seen countless instances where platforms relying on flawed algorithms or biased moderators have censored legitimate political dissent, religious texts, or historical education under the guise of moderation. One example of this is in 2017, when YouTube's automated systems removed over 100,000 videos documenting human rights abuses and war crimes in Syria because it misclassified them as extremist content. Additionally, research from the University of Washington has shown that AI moderation tools are twice as likely to flag tweets written in African American English as offensive compared to standard English. The power to define hate is effectively the power to suppress disagreement, because once we grant tech giants the authority to be the arbiters of acceptable thought, we invite a future where any unpopular opinion can be silenced, which leads to a significant erosion of democratic discourse. Furthermore, we must address the Hydra effect, which is when censorship does not cure hate, but merely drives it into the shadows. Evidence shows that when extremist groups are banned from mainstream sites, they migrate to unmonitored dark platforms, or even mainstream platforms, like Gab or Telegram. A study by NYU Center for Social Media and Politics found that users who were deplatformed from Twitter moved on to Gab, Telegram, or even Truth Social from Donald Trump, and became far more toxic and extremist in their rhetoric within weeks. There was an increase in 600% of traffic, creating unmoderated echo chambers in Telegram. The warrant here is that in the sunlight of a mainstream platform, these ideas can be challenged, but in the private echo chambers, they create a more fractured and dangerous society where extremism is allowed to grow and fester without any challenging. Finally, our final argument rests on the primacy of free expression as the best remedy for bad ideas. Following the long-standing principle that the cure for bad speech is more speech, we state that a resilient society must learn to critically engage and socially ostracize these harmful ideologies, rather than trying to hide them behind corporate filter. This is supported by the counter-speech theory popularized by legal scholar Nadine Strossen, who points out that government and corporate censorship has been used historically to silence civil rights leaders and LGBTQ activists. When we protect even offensive speech, we ensure that the tools of censorship can never be turned against the revolutionary or the marginalized. The ultimate impact is the preservation of a truly open society where the power of truth rests on our hands and not the hands of corporate America or corporate world. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the first crossfire between first speakers. Both parties ready? Yes?
Huh?
Are both parties ready for the first crossfire?
No. 30 seconds.
30 seconds for the con side, for the pro side.
Messing on the dark web. 90% of them are deleted in air, not in the dark. First of all, even always find this way to make a more violent society. That's all.
First question asked by the pro. Take it away. Time.
Is it working, the mic? Working?
Yeah.
Okay. Will you rather violent extremists have access to millions of people on mainstream platforms, or only to each on the dark web? Yeah. Yeah, it's turned on. Yeah. Hello? Is it working? Hello? Yeah. Okay. Hello? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, time.
Will you rather violent extremists have access to millions of people on the mainstream platforms, or only to each other on the dark web?
All right, there's a very big misconstruction that you are making in that question. You are saying violent extremists. However, there must be a distinction made, and I don't know if you're aware of it. There is a clear distinction between hate speech and incitement to violence. One is protected by the First Amendment of the United States of America, which is hate speech. The one which is not protected and is condemned instead, like for example in the Brandenburg v. Ohio ruling, is incitement to violence, which can be tested and does not fall under the guise of hate speech. So you implying that we are allowing these violent extremists to exist is inherently implying that hate speech is the same as incitement to violence, which is not.
Well, clearly it is, because how I mentioned, The first thing to mass genocide in history, the first step is hate speech. And to your response, 90% of people, when we delete the message on social media, they lose recruitment and lose the ability to connect with each other. However, in the dark web, there's only a couple of people.
I'm sorry, but again, what I said, it is not the same. I would like for you to bring up evidence as to why it is the same, but I've brought up a ruling, Brandenburg v. Ohio in the United States, which clearly states that hate speech is not the same as incitement to violence. And hate speech, while it is inherently subjective, as I stated in my arguments, the incitement to violence is not, and it is completely testable by the Brandenburg test. So I would like for you to refrain from saying that it is the same, because it is not. And that falls back onto your other arguments, which are stated, you know, like you said, the Holocaust was caused by incitement to violence from extremist leaders. That is not protected by the First Amendment, and it is not considered hate speech. It is considered incitement to violence by law. So I would like for you to explain to me how these extremist leaders doing incitement to violence falls under the guise of hate speech when they are not the same thing.
Well, hate speech in itself, it's about talking and undermining what it is a large quantity groups of people. And as we see, like example I gave you from the Holocaust, Hitler itself was contribute to the movement of mass genocide from all those people.
Did he incite violence?
Yes, he did. And his
Does that fall under hate speech?
Yes, it does.
But I have already stated that it doesn't.
No, you're saying.
I have already provided proof that it does not.
Well, I did provide your proof in my first argument.
You provided proof that there was incitement to violence. You did not provide proof that hate speech is the same as incitement to violence. I have provided proof that
I
it's
told
not.
you it is related already.
And that
told me
would be
it's related.
time
I
for
provided proof as
that
to
would
why
be
it's not.
time. Thank you. First crossfire over. Moving on to the rebuttal speeches. Are both parties ready?
It's up to you. 10 seconds.
How much?
10.
10 seconds.
Sorry.
10 seconds.
Is it on?
Seconds up.
Okay.
Okay. 3 minutes on the clock. Take it away.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. The position of defends hate speech in the name of free expression, but they are defending a version of expression that is cannibalistic, one that consumes the rights of others and ultimately destroys the very democracy that protects it. Today, I will prove that for a marketplace of ideas to function and for a democracy to survive, the state must have the power to regulate hate. We begin with individual. The position relies on the outdated myth that words will never hurt me. Modern neuroscience has debunked this. Our brains are hardwired to treat social exclusion and verbal attack as a psychological emergency. When a person is targeted with hate speech, it isn't just their feelings that are hurt, it's their biology that is compromised. When a person is targeted with hate speech, the body's endocrine systems enter a state of chronic allostical load, a permanent state of biological emergency that causes measurable cycle decay. The paradox of tolerance. Beyond the marketplace, we must look at the survival of the state itself. The position suggests that all ideas deserve a platform, but history has shown that some ideas are designed specifically to dismantle the platform they stay on. As philosopher Karl Popper famously established, if a society extends unlimited tolerance, even those who are intolerant, if it is not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed. Look at the German Basic Law. Within the shadow of the Holocaust, Germany realized that absolute free speech was the primary weapon used to destroy the Weimar Republic. Today, German law prioritizes human dignity, Article 1, as the supreme value even above absolute expression. Their incitement to hatred laws are not a sign of weakness, but a sign of militant democracy that is strong enough to defend itself. We are not choosing between speech and no speech. We're choosing between a public square dominated by a hateful few or a public square open to all. We are choosing between a democracy that is defensive and a democracy that protects its citizens' dignity. We must choose the path of protected dignity over the path of unregulated cruelty.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the con side. 3 minutes on the clock. Take it away.
Okay. Con contention number 1. Correlation does not determine policy. The existence of a statistical correlation between slurs and violence does not by itself justify broad lexical censorship. Slurs appear in many contexts that do not lead to violence. Violence also often occurs without slur usage. Risk identification does not automatically specify the most effective or least harmful intervention. Absolute free speech, as my opponent stated in the rebuttal speech, also includes that of the incitement to violence. The First Amendment does not. All of my opponent's arguments also rely on hate speech inciting violence fall flat when based with the clear distinction that we have made between hate speech and the incitement to violence, as evidenced by the ruling of Brandenburg v. Ohio, which they continue to ignore and blatantly denies without evidence. Con contention number 2. Vocabulary is a proxy, not the driver. Violence is driven by intent, organization, leadership, and coordination. Vocabulary is secondary or tertiary indicator, not the core mechanism. Evidence. Organized violence requires mobilization, logistics, and leadership structures. Con contention number 4. Displacement increases hidden risk. Public lexical suppression pushes extremist actors into private or encrypted spaces where detection and intervention are more difficult. My opponent states that while their numbers are reduced, this allows them to become more organized. Tying back to my contention number 2, that by reducing the size of these people and interweaving them in smaller spaces, they become more organized. And as I stated in my contention number 2, in the evidence, organized violence requires mobilization, logistic, and leadership structures, which are more easily attained with smaller numbers. Contention number 6, overreach and political weaponization. Claim. Broad vocabulary rules grant platforms excessive discretionary power that can be exploited or politicized, allowing tag media giants to morally determine what counts and what doesn't count as hate speech is a direct infringement on the First Amendment. Evidence. Inconsistent enforcement across regions and groups will cause mass infringement on the First Amendment. Governments and organized groups can pressure platforms to suppress disfavored speech. Historical examples of moderation tools being repurposed beyond their original scope. Con contention number 7, chilling effect.
I'm sorry, that would be time. Thank you. Moving on to the second crossfire between the two second speakers. Are both parties ready?
Yeah.
Okay. 3 minutes on the clock. The first question is asked by the pro side. Take it away.
Okay, so you constantly are saying that the violence and hate speech doesn't have a correlation. But when you hate on someone, you had hate speech, you literally have a violent act to someone. For example, 24% of cyberbullying, that person who is cyberbullying are committing suicide. How is that not violence? And I'm saying you an argument that 90% of the people who are giving hate speech in social media on the sunlight are eliminated. They are not in the dark web. So you only have it 10% on the dark web. So what do you prefer, 100% on the social media? So it could be more violent?
I will start by addressing what you mentioned about the people who commit suicide. I know it is sad, but you have failed to prove that this is a direct correlation to hate speech. Hate speech is not the only way you can incite to violence. It can be verbal, yes, but that doesn't immediately make it hate speech.
So because if verbal is in the violent, so they suicide because they want to? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying that they committed suicide because of the verbal aggression, not because what you're saying is that verbal aggression is the same as hate speech. Hate speech is not the same as verbal aggression.
Okay, but what does it goes to? It goes to violence, to death. And you're saying previously in your speech that not censoring make a more violent society? How not censoring hate speech and violent make a more peaceful society? That doesn't make sense.
It actually does. I would like to start with the direct consequences of censorship would be overreach and political weaponization, my contention number 6. Also, your argument about hate speech being equal to violence is addressed in my contention number 1. Correlation does not determine policy. The existence of statistical correlation between slurs and violence does not by itself justify broad lexical censorship. Violence on a verbal medium does not equal.
Okay, so you're telling me that doesn't have any correlation between violence and hate speech. Verbal harm and psychical harm are linked through normalization and dehumanization. Violence doesn't begin with action. It begins with groups are framed as threats or less than human. The standard isn't whether every hateful statement causes violence, it's whether mass amplification statistically increases the probability of real-world harm. You said that organized people in the dark web are more violent than the 100% of them doing it. So
yes,
how does it work? 10% when you take down 90?
That 90% is unorganized, merely expresses their hateful thoughts and cause little to no harm.
That would
in
be
comparison.
time. That would be time. Thank you for the second crossfire. Moving on to summaries from the first speakers. Are both parties ready?
30 seconds.
30 seconds for the pro side on the clock. Thirty seconds up. Moving on to summaries. 3 minutes on the clock. Pro, take it away.
The opposition wants to treat the hate speech as a harmless opinion, but neuroscience proves otherwise. Oh, the mic, okay. Now, okay. But neuroscience proves otherwise. Peer-reviewed studies from NIH and PMC show that repeat exposure to dehumanizing speech triggers the amygdala, increasing cortisol and causes chronic neurological stress. This is not subjective hurt feelings, it is measurable biological harm that silences victims and removes them from public life. Second, on the link to violence, the opposition claims that verbal speech does not cause violence. That's misleading. Violence doesn't begin with the action, it begins with normalization. Hate speech lowers moral restraint, increases perceived threat, and statistically raises the probability of stochastic violence. The Prio 2025 study shows that reducing digital amplification, even temporarily, completely disrupts coordinated violent incidents. Words act as the fuel, not just the spark. Third, on the so-called Hydra effect, yes, some extremists move to the encrypted forums, but recruitment and real-world impact requires scales. Cutting the reach by 90% through deplatforming removes access to the general public, the very population needed to radicalize new actors. A small isolated group is far less dangerous than a viral megaphone reaching millions. Fourth, on subjectivity and the slippery slopes, the opposition argues that hate speech is too vague, too regulate. But context-based interpretation is exactly how laws already regulate threats, harassment, and incitement. The solution in these standards, oversight and human review, not allowing predictable harm to flourish unchecked. Finally, on corporate power and AI moderation, moderation doesn't protect tech companies, it constrains them. Algorithms currently decide what billions see. Public standards and responsible moderation reduce corporates' overreach and protect citizens. In weighting impacts, we must ask, is a hypothetical abuse of regulation worse than statistically predictable harm to life, health, and public safety? The answer is clear. Regulation reduces scale, risk, and neurological damage. It saves lives, it disrupts pipelines to violence. Safety is a prerequisite for speech. Without it, all rights are meaningless. For these reasons, public health, risk, reduction, scale, and safety, we strongly affirm, and that's it.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Moving on to concise summary, please take it away, 3 minutes.
I'd first like to begin by recapitulating what's been said so far. I'd like to first recognize that hate speech in and of itself is an inherently subjective term that leads to a dangerous slippery slope. As I've said and my opponent has ignored, there is a clear distinction between incitement to violence and hate speech. One is measurable by a test, the Brandenburg test, as stated by the Brandenburg v. Ohio ruling that my opponent has blatantly ignored throughout this entire debate. And other examples such as 100,000 videos being removed documenting human rights abuses and war crimes in Syria because they were flagged wrongfully as extremist content. As well, the Hydra effect that my opponent has misconstrued throughout this, the past crossfire states that when extremist groups are pushed into the shadows, they are put into an echo chamber where they are allowed to fester and organize to cause real-world harm. What does this cause? I can pose a real-world example. When one child is placed in a deeply religious and locked off in a deeply religious environment, they are usually indoctrinated into this environment, as opposed to someone who is open to other views and allowed to experience different opinions. Our final argument rests on the primacy of free speech, which is the best remedy to what I've mentioned before. Because following the long-standing principle that the cure for bad speech is more speech, and this term was popularized by legal scholar Nadine Strossen, which points out that various activists and LGBTQ activists have been censored because they have not been allowed to have free speech due to these subjective laws. I would also like to bring up that my opponent has stated that multiple times that there should be objective measures and that objective measures are the best way to measure these facts. However, if so, then I would like to know why do they insist that this incitement to violence is the same as hate speech when it has objectively been proven false throughout this debate. Again, I would like to bring up that all of their arguments rely on violence being clearly correlated to hate speech, which I have proven, and my partner, that it is not. So that is why I believe all of their arguments eventually fall flat. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the grand crossfire between all parties.
Okay, I have a question.
Both teams ready? Do you need some time? You guys have 50 seconds left. No time?
Yeah.
Okay. Grand crossfire, first question asked by the pro side. Take it away. 3 minutes.
Okay, so you are constantly saying that hate speech is subjective. So all the evidence I have given to you is the depth and all I'm saying about violence is subjective. So you haven't given me a single real evidence instead of a university inform that's saying that the society is way more better without censoring.
I am sorry. I have provided evidence that censorship is not the same as violence, which is what you keep inciting in all of your definitions.
You're only getting inference from university, but you're not
It's
getting
not
real
university.
world. You're not getting real world evidence.
I'm sorry. It is a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Brandenburg v. Ohio. You can look it up right now. It's factual. It protects hate speech.
Okay, but you're not giving evidence. Give me the evidence. I'm not censoring is better than censoring. Like,
because it allows for the censorship. The censorship allows for the hate speech to fester into what is eventually incitement to violence, which cannot be protected. Why? Because they are put into these echo chambers.
But they are.
Sorry, I have a question for you.
No,
because I have not been allowed to ask
I'm
one
saying
throughout
something to you right now.
I have not been allowed to ask you a question throughout this entire debate. Please allow me. Do you agree that the measurement for censorship of hate speech should be objective? Since you are arguing
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Since you are arguing that hate speech is not subjective, do you believe that the measurement for censorship of hate speech should be objective?
I don't understand your question. Can you please repeat?
Do you agree that the measurement, the things that should be censored should be objective? They should be all the same, all together, everywhere?
No.
So it is subjective. You are agreeing with me.
Because the hate speech depends on what you're trying to affect to the people.
Meaning it's subjective.
Meaning it's subjective, which
It's
is
not
what I've stated
subjective.
thus far.
So how are people dying and you want to do something violent and it's subjective?
Hate speech doesn't kill
Violence,
people.
violence is not the same as hate speech.
Okay,
Inciting to
sorry,
violence is
but
not the same as hate speech.
you're
I've
saying-
stated this multiple times. You have not provided any countering evidence, which I
Okay, but you're
have.
telling me that, okay. The 10% I given you, you said that they are locked up and they are going to be more organized, right? Okay, when all of them are not organized on the social media, they're able to do whatever they want. So,
They are
okay,
not
so
allowed to
let's
do
remove
whatever-
jails, remove prisons.
They are
Let's
not
remove
allowed
it.
to do whatever they
Right.
want. They are still subjected to the incitement to violence law, which is not protected by the First Amendment. So therefore, they are allowed to express their opinions. They are not allowed to incite harm onto others.
I want to say something about you arguing that 1969 legal ruling, pre-internet, cannot account for the speed and scale of modern radicalization. We can look at how a slow burn dehumanization leads to objective harms like the Rohingya genocide being done because of motivation in the internet. Are you saying this is not related to
The
violence?
Rohingya genocide is a...
That would be time, sadly. Moving on to final focus. Second speakers of each team.
All the time you need.
Do you need time? Anyone can ask for time. The first one is the pro side.
Oh yeah, time.
How much time do you need?
All
the time you have left? 50 seconds on the clock. That would be time. 50 seconds done. Moving on to final focus. Pro side, take it away. 3 minutes.
Okay, so judges, the opposition has spent this round defending an abstract principle of speech while ignoring the physical bodies healing in the real world. They have failed to provide any evidence that unregulated hate leads to a safer society, choosing instead to treat the 24% of victims who contemplate suicide as subjective or insignificant collateral damage. We refuse to accept that the sentence is disposable. The link between words and blood is not a theory, it's a historical fact. The opposition ignores that Adolf Hitler used absolute free expression as his primary weapon to dismantle the Weimar Republic. He didn't win through logic, he won through radicalization and dehumanization we now call hate speech. This same rhetoric serves as an on-ramp to terrorism today. Hate speech is the logistics of violence. It is the tool used to recruit, radicalize, and trigger lone wolf attacks. When the state allows dehumanization to circulate, it isn't protecting freedom, it is subsidizing the next tragedy. We must follow the model of Germany's basic law, which recognizes that human dignity is the foundation of all rights. If you don't have the right to exist safely, the right to speak is a cruel joke. The opposition is asking you for a blank check to allow social exclusion and the destruction of our democracy. We're asking you to protect the citizens. We're not choosing between speech and no speech. We're choosing between a defenseless society and a dignified one. We must choose to stop the violence before it starts. I move to propose.
Thank you. Khan, final focus.
All of our time?
All of your time, the 2 minutes. Sure.
Yeah, I won.
All right, that would be time. 2 minutes. Final focus, Con, please take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I will enumerate the things that happened in this debate. First of all, one, my opponent has seemed to ignore my first contention. Correlation does not determine policy. The existence of a statistical correlation between slurs and violence does not by itself justify broad lexical censorship. Contention number 2, vocabulary is a proxy, not the driver. Violence is driven by intent, organization, leadership, and coordination, something they have also failed to address. Vocabulary is secondary indicator, not the core mechanism. There's also the subject of slurs reclaimed through power, such as the Q word, the N word. Contention number 6, the overreach and political weaponization has been completely ignored. Broad vocabulary rules grant platforms excessive discretionary power that can be exploited or politicized. My partner mentioned queer and black activists that have been censored because of their vocabulary or their looks. They have also agreed with our argument during the crossfire, stating that hate speech is inherently subjective and cannot have a subjective measure, making their most recent claims of objective measure for the effect of hate speech fully invalid. At the very end of the Grand Crossfire, I did not have enough time to mention something about the Rohingya genocide, which is the fact that it was due to a low amount of censorship within Facebook itself, because there were not many experts in the Rohingya language, making it difficult for said content to have been censored. There's a difference that wasn't properly addressed between hate speech and incitement to violence that the other side clip, blaming, misconstructing, and denying. He also mentioned, my opponent Arcio also mentioned that the Brandenburg v. Ohio ruling is from 1996, but that is misleading. The Brandenburg ruling is still valid to this day, and cases like that get updated as the years go by. There's also another point, which is that removing vocabulary without addressing powerful actors, military networks, was inadequate in the Rohingya genocide. There's also the example of the Nazis and the Jewish, which hate speech was not the primary way in which they incited violence. It was the secondary way. The first way in which they did so was the accusers of false claims.
And that would be time. Thank you. All right. Thank you, participants, for the debate. Give us some minutes to make a decision. Overall, give us some minutes. All judges agree that it was an amazing debate by all participants. We're actually very impressed. So great job on each and every one of you. So with our decision, the decision has been unanimous on the following grounds. During the constructive speeches, both parties presented strong arguments. The pro side provided very strong, a very strong structure with claims and evidence that didn't seem to be referenced afterwards. So on that regard, the constructive goes to the pro side. The first crossfire during between the first speakers, the pro side asked a questions in which the con side called out the false equivalency of hate speech is not the same as an incitement to violence, which remained as their triumphant argument all throughout the debate. During the rebuttal of the pro side was a generalized rebuttal with no references to what the con said, to which we will grant the con the point for the rebuttal, which did reference crossfire questions and previous statements by the opponents. Crossfire, second crossfire was very successful. However, the pro was able to have a great first question and a strong pressure insisting on that. So on those grounds, we grant the second crossfire to the pro side. Now it comes down to the grand crossfire, which is the tiebreaker. So far, all judges agree that the triumphant argument has been that hate speech does not equate an incitement to violence, to which the con was not capable of taking down. So for those reasons and for that, we grant the debate to the con. So congrats, good job.
Fourth year, right, in a row.
Bring me my money.
Or the third. This is the fourth, yeah. There's some words that the engineer left to you guys, to all four of you. He was actually really impressed with how you were debating in the first crossfire. He wasn't able to stay because of other responsibilities that he had to address. So he only extends his congratulations to all of you. On my side, as the judges, they also said that you did an awesome debate. It was great seeing both teams. Ian and Gianfranco, you did awesome. Okay, for being, you actually, I think this is the fourth time you debated. More? No, it's not the second, because with me, I saw you twice with me, and I know that you debated before. So this is the fourth. So that means you did great. You overcame all those students, and you just came up to the end. Once again, guys, congratulations. Great job. Your recognitions will be delivered to you as soon as possible, to all of you. So once again, congrats. Go to Reese's and enjoy.
The four of you are in my class, and I just gotta say that I'm like deeply proud of this. So that was amazing. That was a good job. Hey, that was good.